Hello everybody, welcome back to another sociology lesson. Today's lesson is going to focus on measuring crime, and I'm sure you're going to be happy with this one because the amount of time that I'm going to be talking is very, very short. This is not a lesson with loads and loads of content. It is not a lesson with loads and loads of key writers. It is going to be a lesson which covers and summarises the way that we measure crime, and therefore will be usable alongside the knowledge that you've already got if you get a 20-mark question or a 40-mark topic question which looks at whether or not crime statistics in the UK are accurate. Now, what we have done so far is we've covered all of the social theories up until this point. So we've got everything that, our functionalists, from our Marxists to our interactionists to our realists, we've got everything that they would say about crime and the crime rate according to the statistics, the way that we measure crime. So already, hopefully, in your head, when I say measuring crime, you've already got some ideas of, well, where do we get the crime statistics from, and what do our social theories think about the accuracy, perhaps, of these statistics. Now, what you'll see on the board is a few questions to think about. I'm just going to get you to pause it and consider these for just a second. Who should we ask for the information about crime? Why might crime statistics be lacking in validity? And when you see the word validity, back to your research methods, you know that means truth, getting a true picture. What methods could we use to measure crime? And what do these statistics show about the rate of crime, or the most common offender, or the most common victim? So pause that now and just have a think about these. And we're going to talk about them in just a second. But I want you to consider what your answers would be to those questions if you're asked them today. Okay, so obviously if we're looking at who we might ask for information about crime, all of you will have said the police, and they'll be giving their information to the government. That's it, that's who you should ask, right? But I suppose if you were trying to get the most valid picture, you might ask people who've been the victim. You might ask the general public if crime has affected them directly. You might ask them if they've been a victim of crime. Or you might ask them if they've been a naughty individual and they've committed a crime themselves. Why might crime stats be lacking in validity? Well, we'll talk about that in a lot more depth in just a second, but maybe you thought about the fact that all the information, have you ever been a victim of a crime? I had a lad a couple of years ago who was robbed, punched in the face and threatened with a knife. And he didn't even call the police to report the incident. He said, no, there's nothing that's going to be able to be done about that. So he didn't. That's a robbery. Do you know what I mean? With a weapon, and he didn't even contact the police. So you might have been the victim of crimes, and you don't, you haven't contacted the police. You might have committed some crimes. You might have stolen a £5 or a £10 out your mother or father's purse and wallet. They find out about it, give you a clip around the ear, or, ground you for a couple of weeks, but didn't call the old bill on you. So that's something to consider. What methods could we use to measure crime? Well, obviously you're going to get your methods from, you're going to get your information from the statistics, secondary data from the police. But of course, you could research yourself, and you could ask people, you could interview people, you could send out some questionnaires. And what do the statistics show about the rate of crime and the typical offender? Well, we will talk about that in a second. In your books, you've got page 1 here. It says the official crime rate is compiled annually by the police for the Home Office, and it's going to tell us that the typical criminal is going to belong to the cage categories of this: working class, young, male, ethnic minority. Okay, so that is the particular cage, class, age, gender, ethnicity breakdown of what a typical criminal looks like. Okay, but we might not see this as entirely accurate, and the statistics could be wrong, and there's definitely loads of social theories out there that could give some explanations about why those theories might be incorrect. Sociologists argue that the official crime rate seriously underestimates the real or true rate of crime. The British Crime Survey suggests that nearly 50% of crimes are not recorded. The difference between the official crime rate and the real crime rate is referred to as the hidden or dark figure of crime. That's your missing word at the bottom. So, you've got a man at the bottom of the page. He's here to represent the dark figure of crime. And what I want you to do is split your man down the middle and think about reasons why, firstly, crime might go unreported, and then secondly, and this is trickier, why crime might go unrecorded. So these are two very different things. So remember, crime goes unreported, it's down to you. So if something happens to you and you choose not to tell the police, that incident will never ever go on any records. It's not possible. So if somebody, pinches your phone on a night out, which happens quite a lot, if somebody, chases after you when shouts abuse at you on the bus, or gets in a confrontation with you, or pushes you out the way, or, does anything like that, or robs you at knife point, as with the case of the lad I taught a couple of years ago, and you don't tell the police, that's it, it's never going to go on the record. Now, why might crime go unreported? Why might these instances take place whereby you are not going to tell the police? And there might be a multitude of different reasons. So this side is going to be the easiest one for you to fill out. The next side, though, is crime being unrecorded. Now this is a little bit trickier, okay? So even if you report a crime, so I'll go back to my incident on the bridge with those people who tried to mug me, and I just pushed past them and ran off. Very macho. I call the police, and the police are like, right, well, what happened then? And I was like, well, some people stopped me on the bridge and they were wearing a balaclava. He's like, well, did they rob you? No, not really. Well, did they do anything to you? Well, one pretended to have a knife in his pocket, but I don't think it was a knife. Oh, okay. What do they look like? Don't know. They're wearing balaclavas. Okay. How old were they? Don't really know. Not sure. Oh, okay. What direction did they go? Don't know. Have you ever seen them before? No. So, what were they wearing? Oh, not really sure. Black, probably. Yeah, okay, right. So, I called up that. I reported that incident. Now, I think there is no way that has gone down as anything in the official records, okay? Because what they're going to write down. So, there's lots of reasons why the police might not record crime as well. What could you think of there? Now, you can use that as an example, or you can maybe be cynical as an example as well. Okay, think about, if you're moving to an area, or you're policing an area where the rates of theft have gone up. Are you going to want to, if you're the police chief, make sure all your police officers are targeting all of the, and writing down and recording every little element of theft? If someone pinches your dustbin or something like that, or someone nicks a plant pot out your garden, do you think that in an area where there's a high amount of crime already and a high amount of theft already, the chief of police is going to say, well, make sure whenever we see a plant pot getting nicked, we put those down in the figures? So consider here why crime might be unreported and crime might be unrecorded. And we will move on. We'll discuss these in just a second. So pause it now, fill that front page in. Page 1 should be done. Hot to trot. Off you go. Okay, so some of the factors influencing reporting of a crime that you might put down here on the left-hand side. It's too trivial, okay? The police might not do anything anyway. You might think the police are not interested in hearing from you. You might have reported it 2 or 3 times before. You might have had your You might have had, I don't know, graffiti on the wall, and you reported it 5 times, bugger it, I'm not going to do it again. You might not trust the police. That's certainly a reason why you might not get them involved. It might be inconvenience, it might be hassle. Here's another one, you might want to deal with it personally. You know the person who smashed up your window, you're going to go and sort that out yourself. Not a very sensible thing to do, but could be a reason. It's been reported to other authorities. You might have got punched in the face on the way home by somebody who's at school with you. You don't report it to the police, you report it to your teacher. Fear of reprisals. You might be scared of the what might happen afterwards, or a physical attack. Think about certain crimes where there might be a real risk of reprisal, okay? And unpleasant kind of situation to be in is maybe like domestic violence falls under this category, because if you're being abused by your spouse or your partner, the worst thing that you could do perhaps is call the police, because the police are going to turn up to the house where the person is there, and they're probably not going to react very well to having the police called on, and maybe it means that you're going to have worse treatment in the future. So there are lots and lots of reasons. Other ones that you might put down: family. You might not deal with crime against your family. You might want to, or it's a family friend that the crime has been committed against, so you might not do that. Even more unpleasant ones is you might not even know that you're being the victim of a crime. Thinking about like sexual abuse or sexual violence, particularly against young people, they might not know, they might not recognise that they are the victim of a crime. That works as well for things like lots of like phishing scams and things online. Do you know what I mean? You could be you could have money being extorted out of you, blackmailed, or you're paying money to somebody who's pretending to be a different person, being catfished. You might not know that a crime's taking place. Factors that might influence recording of crime: victims withdrawing their charge, human error when they record the crime. This is whether or not to put it in the statistics or not. They might find that in an area there's high amounts of crime, so they want to make the crime rate go down a little bit lower, so they're going to be a bit more discerning with which crimes they record. As you'll learn today, there's an example where there's different police forces in different areas record thefts, but only at different levels. So if you're in an area where it's got to be £10 or above, if you're in an area that's got to be £5 or above, you might find that the theft increases in areas where they're recording £5 and above. But obviously if it's £10, it might be a little bit lower. That might not mean that there's less crime, it just could be that there's variations in the way it's recorded. The appearance of police might resolve an issue, so you might not need to, if you're having a confrontation with your neighbour, the police show up and they might be able to, rectify the situation and come to an amicable solution without having to arrest anybody or take anything further. Now, so you've got lots of factors and lots of reasons why we might not see crime being reported or recorded, and obviously if you've got that filled and you've got that filled, that's got to tell you something massive about the official statistics, which are that they're probably grossly inaccurate. And that's not necessarily down to the fault of the police, it's just the norms and the culture that you live in. You might never ever contact the police. I always hate the phrase, snitches get stitches. I've never really understood that, because it's never going to make your relationship with the police any better if you're not going to talk to the police. I always think it's quite weird how, people are quick to judge the police. They don't solve any crimes. It's like, well, why don't you talk to them about your crime? Oh no, I'm not going to talk to them about it. Snitches get stitches. So we don't expect them to solve anything then. But it's going to tell you that not just because of the police, that the norms and the culture that we live in mean that the crime rate is going to be very, very, very skewed, and it's not going to be accurate. That would be, the sensible thing to think about. Now, what we would be saying at the minute, and you're going to have to turn back onto page 1 here, is that the crime rate in recent years does appear to be going on the up. And there are lots of reasons for this. 4 in particular that would account for the reasons for the rise in the crime rate. Number 1, policing getting better and more crime being detected. Number 2, there are more laws in place and legislation in place that you can break the law, or things that you can do. So think about take 100 years back. Okay, the crime rate's very, very different now, much higher than it was 100 years ago. Why? Well, we've got like CCTV, DNA and fingerprints and stuff like that. But also, there's more crimes that you can commit now. 100 years ago, I couldn't be illegally, streaming videos or streaming, boxing matches or UFC fights. Why? Well, I want a computer and I want the internet. So there's more crimes now. More victims, because of the increased affluence, there is more things to steal. This might link into this idea of relative deprivation, if you remember. Left realist Leon Young said that relative deprivation was one of the causes of crime. So the fact that there was more to steal, not everybody's in poverty, it's just a few people are in poverty and they can see the riches of everybody else. That might lead to them more likely going out and stealing. And there's more sensitivity. So people are more likely to report crimes. We've seen the increase in crimes of sexual violence that might have been brought about by the Me Too movement, the increase in male rape, okay, which wasn't something that was down as a crime until 10, 15 years ago. But there's about, I think there's like 10,000, I think it's about 8,000 maybe cases of that every year, which is, and that's steadily on the increase as well. So more sensitivity to these types of crimes. Now, if you turn onto page number 2, what you will see in front of you is a breakdown of how we measure crime. And there are 3 ways that we measure crime. Official statistics, victim surveys, and self-report studies are the 3 ways that we get our information on the crime statistics. Now, the most common, and the one that you will have heard me talking about all the time, is the official statistics. These are the government disseminated figures, right, where they get their information from the police and the courts. Those are the ones that they give out. This is obviously massive. This is updated all the time, and it's the big one, really. There are 2 other ways of measuring crime, and we talked about who else you might ask if you were going to judge the crime rate earlier. One is victim surveys, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. An example is the British Crime Survey, and it's when they select a random representative sample of people from the UK and ask them, have you been the victim of a crime last year? If yes, what crime? Now, the difference between these victim surveys and self-report studies is that they are questionnaires or interviews done by researchers. They're not conducted by the police. So therefore, if you say I've been the victim of domestic violence, there is no follow-up of that. It's just, okay, there you go. It means that the police aren't going to be getting involved if you say you've been the victim of a crime. Or if, on a self-report study, you say that you have committed crimes. Because that's what a self-report study is. You say, right, what crimes did I do last year? Now, these are usually done on younger people. But this is obviously going to affect the type of crimes that are going to come up. If you know, maybe you would never report domestic abuse to the police because you'd be worried of the backlash. But if you get asked for a victim survey, you might say it. Just because, well, I may as well be honest with somebody. It's never going to come back. I'm never going to get a conviction for that crime. The police aren't going to get involved, but I might be a bit more honest. Same for a self-report study. You might say, yeah, I've done this crime, I've done this crime, I've done this crime, because nobody's going to come back. It's all anonymous and confidential, and be able to then stick you in front of a judge and sentence you for those crimes. I always think though, what's a weakness of self-report studies, like if you're the best murderer, you're like Britain's best serial killer, are you really going to be telling them about that in a self-report study? Well, probably not. Just at the risk that you might be, you might end up being caught. So, 3 methods of measuring crime all kind of fused together to give us some statistics, but as we know, they're probably not super accurate. And I've never met anybody, I've never done a victim survey, and I've never done a self-report study. And I haven't met anybody in class yet who's told me that they have done those things. So you might have had no person of your background, you might not have any say in any of these because you've never been asked. Obviously, what we're going to see is that the official stats aren't going to be giving us a great, I don't know what slide this is on, aren't going to be giving us a great picture, right? They're not going to be giving us a true picture. So this is the part where we kind of hand it over to you now for the rest of the lesson. You should have filled out that page. So you've got your 3 methods of measuring the data. And then what you've got is page 3, page 4, and page 5 is a bit of reading to do. And you are going to be reading through the rest of this booklet, which is going to explain to you on page 3 the details about official statistics, and that goes all the way down to page 4. You're then going to see details on page 5 about victim surveys, and then finally at the bottom a self-report study. So some information on that, and a little box at the bottom to say which method do you think is best and why. Okay. Now all I want you to do is read through that. We're not going to do this because it's no fun when nobody's in class, but I can show you an example of a self-report study. And what I would do normally is take in the information and process it to see which is the naughtiest class, but I'm afraid we can't do that now. Number 3, so you're going to forget number 2. Number 3, you're going to choose a method that you think is best and why, pop that in the booklet. And then number 4, once you've completed all of the above, I will be sending out the work for you to finish the rest of the booklet. And what you'll see is on page 6, on page 7, and on page 8, there are some blank pages which will each focus on a different type of measurement of crime. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out some cards now, and you'll be able to sort the cards from strengths and weaknesses of these different measures. So I'm going to ask, once I send it out, I'll send it on a PDF so everybody can see it. I'm going to ask you guys to then to send me that when it's done, so I can check to make sure, right, you know what we mean by official statistics. Here are some weaknesses. Here's an example of a strength, or here's more weaknesses, and here's one example of a strength. And then I can see that. So you have to take some pictures of those 3 pages. If you're concerned when you get the handout that you're not sure of the order, I'm going to make sure that everything's labelled like A, B, C, D, E. So when you write it to me, you can say, Dan, can you just check official statistics is C, F, M, whatever it is. And then I can say, yeah, those are the right ones, put those in your book. So that's going to be your first thing that you've got to do now, which will take a while, and you've got to make sure you read them very carefully, these strengths and these weaknesses, because you don't want to get them wrong, and that will tell me whether or not you've read this part, because within this bit it gives you a lot of the details that will help you go on to find the strengths and the weaknesses of these different measures of crime. Okay, so that's what you've got to do. So you can pause this now, get on with that, and then you're going to send it me once it's done, and then we're going to finish I'm going to tell you what we've got to do to finish the lesson up, because there's still 2 other things that we've got to have from you today. Okay. Hopefully you've done your, you've sent me your page with all of the necessary strengths and weaknesses on there, and you will get yourself to this page. Okay. Don't read what it says on the board just yet. Okay. Imagine this is. Oh, I can do that, right? So what you've got is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different theories that are listed on there: functionalist, Marxist, interactionist, left realist, and feminist. We are going to look at what their view is on official statistics. But before we start, what I would like you to do is, underneath where you've got the theory, is draw a happy face or a sad face, whether or not you think that they think official statistics are valid or accurate or not. Now what you'll find, when we are in class normally, I try to give a red herring, and I try to do a task that people shouldn't be able to do. So it says on here, 3 are in favour and 2 are against. That's not correct. So if you thought, oh no, I'll use that, that's not going to work for you. That's not necessarily the truth. So, theory, functionalist, Marxist, interactionist, left realist and feminist. Just in there, I want happy faces or sad faces. Do that now. And then, all we've got left to do is looking at the different, what the different theories are going to say. So, the first theory would argue that crime statistics underplay the extent of females as victims. Until recently, police viewed attacks towards domestics were reluctant to get involved. Many female victims of physical and sexual attack are reluctant to report offences. Which social theory do you think would say that? The next one, this social theory are almost unique, apart from functionalists, in accepting official statistics have some realistic value. They are going to suggest that young working class males, disproportionately black ones, are likely to end up being the perpetrators of crime. So which other social theory in that list, other than functionalists, is going to be accepting those official statistics? This approach sees crime statistics as largely useless and a distortion of reality. They argue statistics are a social construct and tell us nothing about the real level of crime. Labelling theory is more interested in the question such as why acts are viewed as more deviant than others and why some groups are more likely to be labelled as deviant than others. So which social theory could that be? This one recognises systematic bias in favour of the powerful in the application of the law. The fact that there's, corporate crime or white-collar crime goes largely unpunished and is absent from the official crime statistics. Which theory is that? And then finally, they share the views of positivists, which remember positivists like a lot of data, like our social facts, our quantitative data, and tend to accept crime statistics uncritically. This theory inspired subcultural theory, for example, started work in the view that crime is young working class male phenomenon. So, which perspective is this? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got your 5 things on there. You can pause at each one if you need to see it. Obviously, don't write the whole thing down. That would be absolutely crazy. But take the salient points and the important bits. That linked in with your smiley face should now match up, because hopefully you've got 2 that think official statistics are good and 3 that think official statistics are bad, and you've got a perfectly filled in page number 9, and you're going to send me that as well. So page number 9, I now want to be emailed or sent to me in the chat, just to double check that you've got that one right as well. Okay. And here is our final act for today. And the final thing that we are going to look at is a 20-mark question. Now, worry not and fear not. You're not going to do it, but what you are going to do is you are going to do a plan for me. And you should have this one at home, which I sent out earlier. And I'm hoping that you got something in the post from me from a couple of weeks ago. So, you should have this at home already. Official crime statistics are not an accurate measure of crime rates in the UK. Explain evidence that supports this view. That is your 20-mark question. Now, remember, we don't know whether you're going to have an exam or what the crack is with that this year, but you might have to have a mock. So we haven't done a 20-marker in a long time. 20 marks, easy. 20 marks needs a minimum of 3 paragraphs. If you can get a 4th one in there, brilliant. If not, don't you worry, okay? Now, normally, what I would suggest is that each paragraph be focused on a key writer or a key idea. And I think that you can do that using, in this question, right? I think you can definitely do that. Now, you could easily put on a 4th one here, And you might want to plan for that. You might want to put the extra on there. It's a good bit of revision. What else are you going to do, eh? You're stuck on lockdown. So I want you to put together a plan for what you would write in this question and see. The first thing that you've got is actually a paragraph on the official stats themselves. So all you've got to do is, crime is not an accurate measure, explain why. Now, remember the key word in your 20 marker is because. You need to have becauses written in there. Don't fall into the trap, and some people have done this, and I've seen it on previous 20 markers, of people writing, this is useful because. It's like, no, when we do the practice paragraphs in class, they're for 40 mark questions, and saying the word useful is because that might be the wording of the title of the question, or a contribution of, or something like that. In a 20 marker, you don't have to talk about anything being useful, nothing like that. All you've got to do is give me 3 or 4 different explanations for why some people would say that. You can't evaluate in it, so there should be no AO3, nothing like that. There's no need to construct an argument. All you've got to do is explain evidence that supports the view that official crime stats are not an accurate measure of crime in the UK. And I would say start off with official statistics. And I think there are 2 big problems here with the official statistics that might lead to a dark figure of crime. Now, you will not have, there might be some statistics that you've got in the booklet that you might want to put in there. That's absolutely fine. But keeping this simple, you might not have necessarily a key writer. You could find one. Or statistics, you could find them though, but there will be some certainly in that booklet. But I need the 2 big problems with the official statistics that you get from the police. I need that explained in that paragraph. It's a nice and easy opener to say why these crime rates are not valid, they're not an accurate picture. Now, after that, what I've done is I've said Marxism, and I said interactionism. Now, obviously, these social theories are going to be critical of the official statistics. But in these paragraphs, I will now need some writers to back up the point. So I will now need evidence from these writers that would suggest that the official stats are not good. Now, for Marxism, I'm thinking in my head of probably 2 or 3 that you could use. So you might have 2 writers in this paragraph. So you need to figure out who those writers are. For interactionism, there is one big writer who I think is going to be used in here, whose study you can use. And if you remember when we did it in class, I said this person's study is brilliant because you can use it for like any question in the scheme of questions. You can use it for interactionism, you can use it for crime statistics, you could use it for class, you could use it for age, you could use it for ethnicity. So which study is it from an interactionist perspective who's going to say the crime stats are not valid and this is the reason why? It is because of this. Okay? Now, number 4, if you wanted to, feminism. And I was just doing this 30 seconds ago, mate. I was like, oh yeah, you could do a paragraph on feminism. But makes it a little bit trickier. So if you want to stretch yourself, think about feminism and go back to your booklet. There was certainly something that we saw in feminism from a feminist perspective that would tell us that the crime statistics aren't going to be good or aren't going to be perfect and valid for women. And you could link it to a couple of key writers or a couple of cases. There's actually quite a lot in the feminist booklet that you could do. So here's the part where, as you can see, the chains are being taken off now. We're not looking at how to write something because you know how to do a paragraph. We've got no evaluation, so all you've got to do is really explain. You make sure you give me a because. 2 key writers for Marxism, 1 key writer for interactionism. See what you got for feminism if you want to put that in there and stretch yourself. Paragraph on the official statistics and 2 big problems with that I think would be enough in the real thing. If you can find yourself a bit of support in the booklet. And that's it. And note that in today's lesson there's not really been anything new. There's not a load of content. Everything seems quite straightforward. And then I'm going to use my knowledge of Marxism, feminism and interactionism to sculpt the paragraph. Now I think absolutely 1 writer for interactionism will be perfect. But there's other things in interactionism as well that you could use, okay? And I don't really want to restrict you by telling you what to do here, because I don't really want anybody's plan to be the same. And I think now we've got so much knowledge that applying your knowledge to this question is going to be the interesting part. So who would you choose? And obviously, send me that and tell me who you're going to pick. And that's it. So there should be 3 things that you've got done today. The first thing is you've sent me page, I think it was 5, 6 and 7, and the strengths and the weaknesses of the different measures of crime. Then the next page on, which might be page number 9, and it is, I want you to send me a breakdown of the theories, which have got smiley faces and which have got sad faces about official statistics, and a quick overview of what their point is. You send me that. And then finally, to complete the lesson and get your mark, you send me a copy of this lovely plan, with probably everybody's paragraph 1 looking the same, but these ones looking different, because now you're selecting the key writers and the judgment that you're going to make from the different theories about the validity of statistics. All of these are going to say, yeah, they're not accurate, but they're all going to give a different reason, and the different theories within them will be saying something different. If you've got any problems, of course, you need to let me know. But I'm hoping this is straightforward, and I'm hoping you're realising now, when I said the other day, right, there's not much new stuff coming, it's applying your knowledge, you can see, oh, actually, yeah, I probably could have answered this question without even doing the booklet, because that's how strong your knowledge is of the social theories. Okay, thanks, guys.